have 4 sons, Zach, Josh, Nick, and Justin, and 3 grandchildren, Abby, Reese, and Flynn.
And what's special about Abby?
Abby goes to school here. Abby Allen's my granddaughter.
She's in Mrs. Garrett's class, 4th grade.
Oh.
Yeah. And was she at Horizon before? Is she
Yes, for a year.
Came over? Yeah.
They-
So last year, remember when we redrew the boundaries? So some of the kids who went to Horizon last year are here now. So yeah, so Abby's part of that group, which is probably why you guys don't know her very well because you didn't grow up with her. But great, just a cute, great little tidbit of information. Thank you, Ian, very much. Okay, so who would like to explain to Mr. Allen what we're doing? Christina.
We're writing a school newspaper for our 20th anniversary for Clear Creek.
Okay.
We're interviewing you.
And so we have a bunch of different story ideas. Who would like to share what their story is? Abby, what is yours?
At our school, when the 5th graders leave, we have this big party called 5th grade farewell, and what Jacob and I are doing is the 5th grade farewell throughout the years of Clear Creek.
It's a big party, very exciting. Okay, Taryn, what is your story?
We're doing what was life like in 1997 and how it's different now.
That's very good.
That's very good.
Big difference in cell phones today.
Yeah, that was the first thing I talked about. Christoph, what is your story idea?
My story idea is how our playgrounds changed during the school years that we were here.
That's good.
So that was one. And then Christina,
Mine is why was CCE built?
why was CCE built? Which Mr. Allen is going to have a lot of information about what Shawnee was like in 1997 versus what it's like now. I think it looks a little bit different out here
Quite a
than
bit.
it did at the time. So let's go ahead, and my very first question that I want Mr. Allen to talk about, because some of you don't, we know what different people do in the parts of government, but we don't really understand it. So can you tell us what the mayor of Shawnee did? Because that wasn't your only job.
No, I had an insurance agent for State Farm. Actually, I had an office building about 2 blocks from Shawnee City Hall, so it was real convenient. And I had a job where I could actually leave and have flexibility. And Shawnee at that time didn't. I know that your parents probably would like a lot more restaurants out here. That's something I still hear today. But when I first got elected to mayor, there was no Target, there wasn't any Walmart, no any PetSmart, Kohl's. So if you wanted to buy or shop, you probably know this shopping center. You normally back then would go to Oak Park Mall. So there's very little retail in Shawnee when I first got elected mayor. So that's something we worked on very hard. And one of the key things for Shawnee when this school was built 20 years ago, it was the first new grade school in the DeSoto School District that was in Shawnee. There was one other school over here by where the Walmart is. It was called Woodsonia. And that school was torn down and replaced by the grade school just to the west here.
Horizon?
No, the one just.
Prairie Ridge.
Prairie Ridge, so, but it was important for Shawnee when the school was built because your parents want to locate where there's good schools. And the most important thing in Shawnee, and now I'm in Johnson County government, but the most important thing that's helped Johnson County be so successful and Shawnee is schools. It's in the political world, it's called economic development. Why do people want to move to your community? And the number one thing that's made this county so successful is good schools. And I know actually there's a bond issue coming up that the parents in this county have consistently wanted and are willing to pay for good schools. That's important because the more education that you receive when you grow up, the better citizens you can be and get good jobs and pay taxes and help future generations be successful. But this school was very important to Shawnee when it was built because it was actually the first new school. And shortly after that, do you know what zip codes are, where your address, do you know your zip codes? This zip code out here, 66218, approximately 20 years ago when the school started getting built out here, was the fastest growing zip code in the state of Kansas. So more houses were being built out here, but that wouldn't have happened without good schools. So when this school was built, it was very important to the development of Shawnee to have a local school that you guys could go to.
Why is it important to you as mayor to want people to move to your city?
Well, you want to continue to grow and develop. The more residents that you have, then the more restaurants, jobs, businesses. I can go down a list of things that doesn't seem like a big deal, but wasn't any post office out here for a long time. The only post office was in eastern Shawnee, quite a distance from here. And I remember we went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied our U.S. senators and our congressmen, and after several trips, we were successful in getting a new post office. Sometimes you have to have patience. When I was mayor, something else that was important because of all the growth or whatever was a new library. And I've been a county commissioner for Johnson County. I'm in my 10th year. When I ran for that office 10 years ago, I'm not a person that has a long list of promises or whatever. I try to do the right thing, consistency all along. I've been elected official 30 years, which is a long time in today's world for a local politician. But that library took a while. We had some economic problems, but I'm so happy that's going to come about. But it takes being in the right position and being able to do it. And that actually, to build that was a 4-3 vote. There's 7 of us on the county commission. So to build that library, we actually built a new one in Lenexa. We're developing more park ground. I think you guys are familiar with Shawnee Mission Park. So additional park ground and trails are being built. And then we also improved our transit system. So by putting all that different stuff together, 4 of us got what we wanted. And one thing I wanted was a library for Western Shawnee, and that's going to be open here in a few months.
Have you all seen the new library being built over by McDonald's and Price Chopper? This is going to be really neat. We're going to be spending a lot of time there as students. It's going to be a great place. So we appreciate that.
It's the second largest one in the library system. So, but anyway, you have to have patience sometimes.
Sometimes you have to have patience.
Things just don't happen right away. I'm going to tell you another story real quickly because you'll probably be going to school across the street. That was farm ground at one time. And at one time there was actually a proposal to build a dog and a horse track on that property.
Oh, really?
And it was very, very controversial. And I didn't represent this part of Shawnee at the time, but I just had a different vision for Shawnee. I thought Shawnee could do much better than that. I was opposed to that, and that was another same thing vote on the city council. That was a 5-3 vote to defeat it. In fact, they had a meeting at Shawnee Mission Northwest, probably with 500 or 600 people in attendance. And the mayor at that time, he thought he knew where the votes were going to be. It was going to be 4-4. But one of the councilmen actually went to the meeting and listened to everybody that spoke, and he changed his mind. So, but anyway, there could have been a dog or a horse track across it. And that would have been bad because it wouldn't have been good for Shawnee, in my opinion. So
No.
what's turned out is much better.
Brought a lot of people to Shawnee. Okay, so who has a question for Mr. Allen? You can raise your hand.
Yes, sir.
Did the school board make the decision to make Clear Creek because of overpopulation in the area?
That's true. That would have been the DeSoto School Board would have made that decision to build the school because more families with children are moving in, and the one school they had was not big enough.
What was the general reason Clear Creek was built?
But just where all the houses around here that were being built, it was a central location to build it. And I think at the same time, they acquired the property to build the high school and the middle school also. So they had vision to do that. And really, from your standpoint, especially, we just built a new home just a few blocks from here also. We did what you call downsize, but anyway, that's where Abby moved at also. But this area was growing, and they knew. I mean, I could go into it was a very big decision for DeSoto that they also put on that same issue when they built the high school to build the high school in DeSoto. And they knew, I remember telling the school board president and the superintendent, if they didn't approve that, Shawnee had so many voters coming in that they probably would not build the high school in DeSoto. It would never get built. So they kind of saw that most of the population of the DeSoto School District is in Shawnee, actually. There's some in Lenexa, maybe a little bit in Olathe, but most of the population's in Shawnee. So that's why there's a high school in DeSoto, there's one here. If not, that school probably would not have been built because Shawnee residents would have wanted a school just here. Yes?
What did it look like before Woodsonia was taken down?
It was just an older grade school right there on the corner of that kind of changed the intersection, but it used to be Johnson Drive and K7. It was a school, I assume it was probably built in the mid-50s. And what's happened with those older schools is that it doesn't have all the what they call, if you're disabled, the height of the water fountains, the width of the doorways, all the electrical stuff that you guys have to run all your different computers and everything else. So sometimes it's less expensive actually to tear those schools down and replace them. Shawnee's very fortunate. There's Shawnee Mission School District, there's DeSoto School District, and there's several private schools. The oldest grade school that I'm aware of in Shawnee is actually Broken Arrow Grade School. And that school is approximately 25 years old. So all the different grade schools, private and public schools in the Shawnee Mission School District, DeSoto School District, and the private schools have all been built in the last 25 years. And the reason they did it in the Shawnee Mission is those older schools, to bring everything up to what needs to be done today, it was, again, less expensive to build a new school than to remodel those schools. So a lot of money was spent on building all these schools, and it continues to do it. Schools need roofs, they need air conditioning replaced, playground equipment. I heard you guys talk about parking lots. I know same thing at the county. I think we own 300 different buildings in the county, and we spend a lot of money just maintaining and updating. And unfortunately today, as it is in schools here, security is a big issue also, and we have the same issue at the county, so.
What did the area look like when Clear Creek was built? You mentioned that the two other schools were not built, Prairie Ridge was not built.
That's correct.
And so the houses were starting, but did it feel like you were kind of in the middle of nowhere at
You-
that time, or?
Yes, it was just basically if the ground could be farmed, there would have been, wheat or corn or whatever out here. On that property, it was a little bit rougher. I think it was more for pasture for cattle but it was just basically, as far as you could see, vacant ground. So if you go out on the highway a little bit and look at some farm pasture, in a way, it wouldn't be too much different than that. It was basically vacant ground.
Did the principal from Woodsonia, staff and students there, did any of them come to Clear Creek?
I assume they did. That's something I wouldn't have been involved in, so I don't know, but I would assume they would have. I know when they changed schools or built new schools, those teachers usually would go to the new school, most of them.
And that's a good question for Mrs. Groovy. Tomorrow we're interviewing the first principal of Clear Creek
Oh, that's good.
tomorrow, so that will be good. That's a good question, Jaden. All
Yeah.
right, any other questions?
When you were building the building, was there a choice to like connect anything on, or were choices like X-out out of the building?
Okay, again, I wouldn't have been involved in anything to do with the construction of the school. That would have been the DeSoto School District and their board, so.
Was there any sort of a ribbon cutting ceremony that you were involved in, or any celebration?
Yes, I do remember. I think, as far as I remember, I've been to a lot of them, but I do recall coming out here, so.
What does that entail when you open up a new school as the mayor? What was your job?
Well, it's always good. No, I mean, they have a bunch of dignitaries, and then they usually have a long ribbon, and you have sometimes little scissors everybody cuts, and sometimes they've got great big scissors to officially welcome him. But again, in my opinion, you can't spend enough money on schools. It's much better to educate and give you guys the best opportunity to succeed. It's money well spent. So, if you don't spend the money and you guys aren't successful, I can tell you what happens on the other end. So we would much rather you guys learn and have skills that you can go on and take care of yourselves, so. But you're in a great county.